I can unlock my phone with my face, you can access your bank account with your voice, and fingerprints are often the key information on a national ID card. All of this, face, voice, fingerprints, there are biometrics, unique algorithmic measurements of us that are revolutionising the process of identification. But biometrics are far from perfect. Their convenience and seeming infallibility comes at a price. Most crucially, our privacy.
Biometric screening is a way of using an individual's specific physical or biological characteristics to verify identity. Its purpose is to tighten security, protecting personal documents such as passports or contracts, and making actions like withdrawing money or entering private premises safer and easier.
Iris scans, facial recognition, and infrared palm scanning have been used to speed up access to canteens, libraries, registrations, payments, and lockers. A big selling point, of course, has been security. Biometric-enabled access is seen as a foolproof way of keeping school buildings safer. However, a big concern is how robust these systems are. Who has access to the biometric data? Is there a process for deletion? And what happens if the system is compromised?
The oldest and most widely used form is digital fingerprinting. Unique and permanent, except when a person suffers severe burns, the patterns making up our fingerprints are identifiable thanks to regions known as deltas, forks, and ridge endings. Each print contains up to 90 of these points, but using just a dozen or so should be enough to identify one identical twin from another. Eye scans work in a similar way. Thanks to the distinct structure of each individual iris, reliable identification is possible. The technique, however, is costly. A less expensive option, using a palm morphology reader. The only problem, the form of a person's hand changes over time. This technique can be useful, however, for quick identification purposes even in dusty or dirty conditions, and that's why it's often used on construction sites and at harbours. Finger or hand vein recognition is another way of checking identity, as infrared light shows the patterns unique to each individual. Already present at birth, they remain with us until we die. Finally, there's the good old-fashioned signing on the dotted line of contracts and papers. Pressure points, pace, and pattern all make up the specific identity of our signature.
With the touch of a finger, millions of people around the world use automated fingerprint verification to cross international borders, clock in at work, or access their bank accounts. In 2004, the Air Force funded liveness detection to address the problem of spoofing.
Fingerprint recognition technology is a type of biometric. Biometrics refer to an area of technology that identify people based on their physical characteristics. Arguably, one of the most convenient is fingerprint sensors. Fingerprints are a stable biometric throughout a person's lifetime. So not only are they very distinct from person to person, but they can be acquired early in life and then used to identify a person years or decades later. But conventional ways to measure a fingerprint, to collect a fingerprint, just look at the surface features. What the Lumidyne technology does differently and uniquely is it uses multiple wavelengths of light to collect a fingerprint image. And in doing that, it collects information about the surface fingerprint, as well as below the surface. There's another fingerprint that looks like the surface fingerprint, but it's below the surface of the skin. When we pass these multiple wavelengths of light through the sample and see something that doesn't look like human skin, then we know that somebody is trying to use a spoof sample to defeat the security of the system.
Liveness detection is a very important part of making a biometric measurement. All biometrics are vulnerable to having copies of the biometric presented instead of the real person being there. So liveness detection is a very important part of being able to make sure that the correct person is physically present during the biometric scan. If you can't ensure that it's the correct person, then copying a biometric is just like copying a password. You defeat the security of the overall system.
Our sensor uniquely can tell the difference between real living skin and other materials.
Fingerprint scanners are great. Touch ID in phones are fast, secure, and they can be used for multiple purposes. But there is one big problem. It requires space, which makes the device bezels huge, or manufacturers put it in awkward places, making it difficult for users to use it while it lays flat on a surface, or even do some finger yoga to reach the sensor. The solution is not something new. A fingerprint scanner under the screen was patented in 2015 by Qualcomm, but no company implemented it till Vivo did it in CES 2018 last week. To understand the under-screen fingerprint scanner, we need to understand how normal Touch IDs work and different types of the same. The first device to have fingerprint scanning technology was Motorola Atrix, which used an optical fingerprint scanner. These type of fingerprint scanners use a source light which hits the finger placed on the glass plate and gets reflected back. This reflected light then passes through a lens and gets magnified. A light sensory system along with a charged coupled device or CCD captures this light and creates electrical impulses corresponding to it. An analog to digital converter then converts the analog charges into a digital image just like a camcorder or a camera. Using some image recognition algorithms, this image is then compared with the already calibrated finger's image to validate the same. Now, using these systems have two main drawbacks, which include the fact that it creates a two-dimensional image of the fingerprint, due to which it is less secure and can easily be tricked with a high-resolution image of the finger. It is also very bulky, which makes it unfit for smartphone applications. The second type of fingerprint scanner is a capacitive one. This type of fingerprint scanner uses the same charged coupled device under a metallic plate over which the finger comes into contact. The ridges of the finger conducts electricity and valleys don't, which creates a pattern in the CCD. Each finger has a unique pattern, and then this pattern is converted into digital pattern by an analog to digital converter and used for validation with the calibrated finger. The problem with this system is the fact that it depends on the conductivity of your skin, and anything like dirt or water which may get trapped can create a true negative. Also, it can only be used under a metallic surface and not under a glass screen. For not compromising space, companies now develop an in-screen or under-screen fingerprint sensor. Last week in CES, Vivo announced a smartphone with under-screen fingerprint scanner which actually uses an optical fingerprint scanning technology. This can only work with OLED panels because, as explained earlier, it has a light emitter and sensor which emits light and captures it back, and light can only pass through glass. LCD panels have an obstructing backlight, due to which optical sensors cannot be used with it. The third type of fingerprint scanner is called ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, which was introduced by Qualcomm in the name of Sense ID. This system has a transmitter which can send ultrasonic signals which can travel through glass but gets reflected by human skin. The returning ultrasonic sound's mechanical stress is detected by the receiver, which can identify ridges and valleys and other obstructions. It creates a 3D model of the fingerprint, due to which it is highly secure. The system uses Qualcomm MSM Secure architecture for providing additional security by keeping the data captured from your fingerprint in a separate secure environment in your phone itself without sharing the data to any cloud.
Within just a few decades, facial recognition has gone from being some staple of highly advanced security systems in movies to existing all around us and even in the palms of our hands. The technology has been implemented in several ways in our society, Some phones use facial recognition to grant access, and some governments, like China and the US, are using facial recognition on databases like driver's licenses for a variety of reasons. Then we've got fun things like Snapchat filters that utilize facial detection. Now, there's a big difference between facial detection and facial recognition. With facial detection, the computer is saying, yep, that's a face. And with facial recognition, the computer is saying, yep, that's your face. This ability to confirm identity is something our brains pick up on pretty quickly when we're young, but it's actually a pretty complex problem for computers. So, let's take a look at facial recognition and the science of how it works. When you think of a human face, you probably think of a pretty basic set of features. A face has eyes, a nose, and a mouth. But obviously, there's more to a face than just these features. In fact, to get a good idea of how complex this problem can get, you can draw a bunch of different simple faces. You'll notice that they differ in a lot of factors, like the width of the nose, the distance between the eyes, the shape and the size of the mouth, and so on. Some facial recognition technologies look at up to 80 factors on the face to help identify unique features and ultimately, identities. These features get to be pretty detailed, observing things like the depth of eye sockets, the height of cheekbones, and the shape of the jawline. Of course, with so many detailed factors to be measured, some complications can arise. For instance, consider the problem of aging faces. After all, as we get older, we look different. In order to work around this, computers have learned what features tend to go relatively unchanged no matter how old we get, and they look closely at these features. But even if we didn't age, there would still be everyday complications. What happens if the computer tries to analyze your face, but you're not looking at its sensor or camera at precisely the same angle every time? This is something humans encounter on a daily basis, but never really have a problem with. For computers though, this can present a seriously complicated obstacle in detecting and recognizing faces. So, engineers have found a few different techniques to work around this. A lot of phones that utilize facial recognition will prompt you to move your face around when you set up the facial identification system in order to know what you look like from different angles. Other systems utilize 2D to 3D technologies that map 2D images of your face onto a 3D model to calculate what you would look like from different angles. Computers measure these factors down to scales smaller than a millimeter in order to generate a face print, which, as the name implies, is basically a fingerprint, but for your face. And these face prints have become incredibly accurate. They're able to correctly identify people with a near 100% accuracy, and are even able to detect the minor differences in identical twins. As the technology has improved and become more widespread, the possibilities for its uses have grown as well. Right now, we use facial recognition every day for things like phone security, but the technology is seeing more serious uses from important organizations like banks and even governments. In Japan, some banks are looking at implementing facial recognition technologies into their ATMs as a security measure for verifying transactions. In the United States, important government agencies like ICE and the FBI are using facial recognition to create databases from existing documents like driver's licenses. Whatever the use, we know that this technology is becoming more and more present in our daily lives, and it doesn't look like that'll be stopping anytime soon. So, as is the case with all things, it's important that we stay educated and informed about these technologies. After all, they're learning as much as they can about us.
Lights off. Lock the door.
Hey, what can I do for you?
I'll just have a double espresso.
Okay. Over there, please. That's all.
Thank you.
Have a nice day. Bye.
What's wrong, Bob?